Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Bass Fishing for Noobs here on the Paddle and Fin podcast. I'm your host, Sean.
And I'm Susie Q.
Welcome back, everyone. Tonight, Susie and I are just going to talk a little bit about how our seasons have gone so far, talk about the kind of techniques and stuff that have been working for us, and figure we could talk about some of the other kind of strange things that we're seeing. We were just talking a little bit before the show about, I know in my area just last week, I caught a fish with a bloody tail that pretty much looked like she was fanning the bed, and it really surprised me because I figured that would have been long done in my area by now. And it seemed like in our the Paddle and Fin host chat that kind of a consensus across the board that a lot of folks, especially north of me, were also seeing that same thing, or seeing bedding fish, or at least post spawn. Whereas I would have thought that was pretty much done. So it really surprised me this week about that.
Yeah, it's definitely been a weird May for sure. Yeah, I you had posted in the chat, about the bloody tail. I was judging a tournament today that was kind of in the northeast part of the country, which it kind of makes sense that they would still kind of be betting this time of year, but I know Brad Hicks, who's in Ohio, had found some bedding fish. And kind of in my area, I almost think that we still had some stragglers who were, kind of late spawning this time of year when I was on my home waters this past weekend. And, we have a full moon coming out actually today.
Yep.
And, I was, looking at, the past weather trends and looking at how April was and how May was, and I was just like, man, it's felt like a weird, like last couple of months, like weather wise,
Mm-hmm.
and when I was out this past weekend, which I'll kind of dive into a little bit as well, not only have I noticed again, how we're in quite a bit of a drought. I mean, we need rain real bad. We're like almost 2 foot below normal for one thing, and just the typical patterns that I'm usually at this time of year just were not there, and even the vegetation seemed to be a little delayed.
I noticed that too, for sure.
Yeah, it's so it always amazes me, when you go out similar times of year, and there's always something different, whether it be the way the vegetation is coming in, the way the bite has changed, what stage of the spawn they're in, or if they're coming out of, all these different things. It's always crazy when you pay attention to some of those details. And not only is it helping you kind of learn about these different things and keying in on some of these different things, learning these little tips and tricks to kind of help you learn more as an angler, but just kind of paying attention to some of these key things to kind of help you build your knowledge to help get more successful out on the water as well. But it also can be more frustrating as
Oh
well,
yeah.
which is a little bit more what we'll dive into as well. But I know the guys on the Reel Down are going to be talking about this, but we're actually recording on a Saturday. But today is day one of the Possum Kingdom Bassmaster. Holy crap! I really wanted to go to that. Like, I had planned on going.
I thought I remembered you saying you were going to go to that.
I had it planned. I had an Airbnb booked, all the works and everything, but I had some personal things come up and whatnot, and I couldn't quite pull the trigger, expenses and all that other stuff. I was pretty bummed and whatnot. And then I saw like how many people had signed up. There's 130 anglers that had signed up for that, and I was like, holy cow, that's quite a few.
Yeah.
And right off the get-go, I think like within the first 2 hours, I want to say there was like one person who had already put up, what was it, like 106 inches?
Holy cow.
Yeah. And so we're at the end of day one already. First place has 109.75 inches.
That is crazy.
That just blows my mind. And his biggest fish is 24 inches.
Oh my gosh.
But I don't think that's the biggest fish. I want to say that I saw something bigger than that earlier. Let's see if there's a 24.75. I swear, I saw something bigger than that.
And how have you fished Possum Kingdom before, or is this going to be?
I have not. It is definitely on my bucket list.
Okay.
Like, just because of this simple fact. I mean,
Yeah.
You see the numbers coming out of this place. I mean, like I'm scrolling down and I see 20, 20, 22, 23, 24, and all these just gigantor bass.
That's awesome.
On at this place. I'm just like, oh my God. Like my PB would probably be shattered like over and over again. It's unreal. So yeah, it looks like the big fish of day one is a 24.75.
I can't even imagine.
This thing is a behemoth. Like it's on a 26-inch catch board, and like it's. Let me see if I could share my screen on this thing. Oh my God, this thing is insane. Let me see here if I can bring this up. Yeah.
Oh my! Look at that.
Look at this. It's fatter than the board. It's almost as long as the board. Look at the eyeballs on that thing. Like I can't even.
Well, look, the identifier seems like tiny.
It looks itty bitty in the guy's hand. I mean, I can't even. Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, that's wild.
That's crazy. Yeah.
That's wild. But yeah, day one, first place has 109.75.
Wow.
109.75.
That's crazy. I mean, what are his other fish? They gotta be mostly
his big fish
all
is
over 20.
24, and his smallest fish is 20.75.
Yeah.
That's just it's unreal.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a 20. Hold on, wait. Did I do that math right? I was like, what is that average? If I divide that by 5, it's 21.95 average.
Yeah. Well, his smallest fish is my PB, you know?
And that right. Yeah.
And it makes you wonder how many other fish he caught, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So he submitted a total of 7 fish.
Okay.
For the day.
Holy crap.
There were 653 fish submitted for day one at Possum Kingdom.
That is crazy.
Yeah. This fishery is like known for its fish. I mean, like the top 19 people have 90 plus inches.
And that's like my best day ever. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. That's Possum Kingdom in a nutshell. I mean, Jesus. Second place has 105.5. Jeez.
Yeah.
That's just insane.
That is crazy. It'll be interesting to see if that keeps up for day two. Like, if it produces 2 days worth of 105
that's
plus
over
bags.
200 inches.
Yeah.
Over 200 inches. Yeah.
That's
just like mind blowing. Like up here in the Northeast, like those numbers are unfathomable to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like a fairy tale. Like those numbers are like a dream to us. Those would like, yeah.
Well, it sounds like a very well managed fishery then, I guess, because holy cow.
Yeah. It's Texas. You know?
Yeah, exactly. No, I was just gonna say that. I mean, it's Florida, it's Texas, it's the Delta in California. Yeah, I don't know. That's insane.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But yeah, anyway, I had it on my list. I really wanted to go. Just things didn't pan out. But it's kind of. I guess it's a good thing I didn't go because if you guys can't tell, I'm fighting the whatever the head plague it is that's been going around the last couple of weeks and whatnot. And fellow coworkers have been fighting it too and whatnot. So I'm hopefully on the tail end of that. So that hasn't been fun, but it's been, yeah, not so fun dealing with it at work and trying to talk and all that other fun stuff. So yeah. Anyway,
Well,
so
yeah.
yeah.
Well, speaking of filling up catch boards, you know, you put some pretty nice pictures from stuff I've seen. So
yeah. So I'll kind of talk about that a little bit here. So I'll kind of start back a little bit earlier, talk about the kickoff of my tournament season. So mine kind of officially started the first weekend in May. I had my first tournament on Newton Lake first weekend in May. And then I had another tournament. It was about the third weekend in May as well. I was up in Rock Lake, Wisconsin. Interesting lake, I will say. It's like, it was a clear water lake, but you could also go to this other part of the lake where it's like a completely different world. Super shallow, lots of weeds, muddy, and whatnot. Then you go to this other part, super clear, deep. So it's just like, wait, where am I? And there was this part of the lake where it was like a triangle. And like you literally look at the map and they called it the pyramids. And so like there's all this superstition around the lake that like there was these aliens and whatnot. Oh yeah, there was actually like some interesting backstory to all this part of the lake. It was kind of cool and weird at the same time.
All right, yeah.
So yeah. So anyway, speaking of weird weather, so I was talking to some of the local guys when I was pre-fishing the day before, and it was actually interesting because prior to they had some warm weather about a week prior, and then a cold front had come through and kind of knocked the temperatures down. Well, when that weather was in that warming trend, the fish had all moved up shallow and were, on beds and everything. Fish were staging up, moving on beds, already on beds, all that other fun stuff. And as soon as that cold front came in, the fish that were already on beds and whatnot, most of them had kind of stayed around, but a lot of the other ones, it had already pushed them off. And so when we were pre-fishing, I could see tons of beds. Nobody was home. It was really interesting. And so pre-fishing, I fished a lot of docks, and there were some kind of like tall reeds and stuff like that. And I could find a lot of fish, but they weren't very big. The biggest I could find was maybe like 14, 15 inches. I couldn't find anything big. And it was really interesting because pre-fishing day, the high was, I think maybe got up to like 70. It was kind of chilly though. The day before, it was just a little bit chillier, but it was kind of on that slow warming trend. And then the day of the tournament, it did start getting warmer. And I wish, this is the crazy thing about fishing and what it really means to, be a skilled angler and to really pay attention, because like it just goes to show like how much I still have to learn and how much, it really takes to just, pay attention to like little details. And even then, like I still may not have even caught on to this. So a lot of people had caught, a bunch of small fish that day. Mm-hmm. But the winning bag was like high 80s, and then the average was like 70s, right? Okay. And so what had happened was the guy who won, he had experienced the same thing. He pre-fished, didn't see much, saw empty beds, the same thing. On tournament day, he said that he started seeing the fish coming up to get back on the beds about midday on tournament day, which is really interesting because it was the kind of that second trend of that warming day, because they had been pushed off from that cold front that had come through the few days prior. And I was like, I never even would have thought of that. you know,
Yes.
just because, like the when it comes to the spawn, that is such a very um like an unknown thing for me still. Especially in my area when it comes to like muddy waters and stuff like that, it's really hard to sight fish too. Clear water, it's a whole different story, but if I wanted to go clear water fishing, I need to go hours away to go clear water bed fishing.
Gotcha.
Around here, it's a lot of muddy water fishing. So I have either gotta, look for muddy swirls or something like that, something really specific to try to look for bed fishing or just get really lucky or something like that. But, it just, bed fishing for me is just, it's definitely not my strength. It's a big weakness. So it's, be knowledgeable in it, knowing how to think about it, work around it, or anything like that. Just it's not my thing. So for the winner to really figure it out, that was definitely in his definitely in his strength to figure it out. And the other cool thing about it was, and he had figured this out either like the year prior or 2 years ago, is the key to it was a certain color of a cut off like a Cinco. And so it was actually like a bubble gum colored, and he'd put it on the end of a drop shot and he'd bounce it around in their bed. He said no other color would work except for this bubble gum color, but it had to be a certain length, because any other length, you would bite just the tip of it, but they wouldn't like hang on to it enough to be able to get the hook set to it. And so he figured out the length of it just, over the couple of years at, the experience of bed fishing and whatnot. He finally got it nailed down. And, hearing these stories and hearing how he's, over the couple of years, been able to trial and error that, he's been able to figure that out. And he said that he sat in this one area, and he said his graph was all blacked out from his lines because he just sat in this one area fishing all these beds because they had just moved up to this one spot. And then that's all he did all day, which is just one area.
Yeah.
And I mean, more power to him because he figured it out that way.
Yeah.
Which was pretty awesome.
It makes you wonder though, like I wonder how that affects the spawn though. Like if some fish were up on beds and then it got real cold and they moved off, does that mean that it just kind of delays theirs, or that they'll just skip it? Like what does that do?
I mean, I don't think that, I'm curious about that too, because when it comes to rivers, I know that when rivers will flood and whatnot,
yeah,
like I'm pretty sure, like if it just stays flooding for weeks and weeks, I'm pretty sure the fish just won't spawn, right?
Yeah, and I think that they've said that on the Susquehanna too. Either they try and spawn and the eggs just get blown away,
just washed away.
Yeah,
right.
Or they just, I don't know if they don't, or I just know that it usually means that that year of fish is going to be not as good.
Not as good, right?
Yeah.
But I do know there are the power plant lakes here. I do know at least the one down south, they have been known where the fish will have a second spawn.
Yeah.
So I have found that to be pretty interesting as well.
Right. And that's why I almost wondered with the one that I found, whether maybe that was something going on because it got hot or got warm and then got cold again and then was starting to warm up again. So I was like, maybe that's what's happening.
Did it trigger like another spawn or something like that? I mean, yeah, who knows? Like, we definitely need to get some more like fish biologists on here to talk to them and talk fish science on here about some of this stuff. I definitely want to pick their brains on a lot of this stuff. Be like, tell me the science behind this, Well,
that's definitely something I can look at because, I've talked to a few of them now, but it definitely, there's more out there. And Who was it that I was just talking to that mentioned a biologist to reach out? I'll have to look back at my notes. One of our last couple
Oh
guests.
yeah, I think Scylla had a contact
Yeah.
for us that she was going to send to us, and I think she did. I just gotta go back through my text to see who that was and whatnot. But yeah. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, let's see here. Backtracking a little bit here. That always happens, you know.
Yep.
But anyway, so yeah, Rock Lake. It went okay. You know, I mean, I got I got my limit pretty easily, but you know, it wasn't a spectacular limit to say, none of the least. But my next tournament is actually going to be coming up next week at Sandcrest Lake, which actually is one of the closer tournaments to home. It's only like an hour and 10 minutes away, which is pretty nice. But I actually did some fun fishing last weekend, which was Memorial Day weekend. And I've been looking forward to it. And there's a wildlife preserve, in a sense that they call it. It's called Imaquan. And it used to be this really phenomenal area that you could go to. I mean, you still can go to. They don't allow motors there. You can't even have a motor on your boat when you go out to this place. And you used to be able to go to just about any section of water there. And if you found like an open patch in the moss and weeds, you'd be able to pull out, 40, 50 fish, no problem. And I mean, they'd be anywhere from 16, 17, 18, 19-inch fish, just no problem, just knocking them out there. Oh my God, it was the most amazing place ever. And then they had to drain a good majority of it. They had to fix a levee and do something else with it. And unfortunately, with that, they did unfortunately have a lot of fish kill with that. And with that as well, a lot of the plant life seemed to have died. And I'm actually quite surprised that a lot of it has not come back with that.
Yeah.
So there used to be some areas out there that would have like tall reeds and like cattail like vegetation out there. And that would be key to where like fish would kind of stack up and hang out at. And when I went out there that past Saturday, I couldn't find any at all. And that was usually like my key like points to where I would go.
Mm-hmm.
But like I also started thinking, I was like, well, the way the weird weather has been and whatnot, I was also thinking, I was like, I wonder if maybe they just hadn't come up yet. But I was looking back on my fish finder, my areas, that I would, be at, and like I couldn't find any sign of them at all. And like I wasn't even marking any fish or anything either. And so like I just got really worried. I was like, man, I was throwing a bunch of different stuff, trying to get stuff to hit. I don't know. I couldn't find much of anything. And so I scooted out of there. I was like, all right, well, I'm going to try to go to Banner and see if I can make something work out there.
Mm-hmm.
Went to one part of Banner and got out there probably about 10 o'clock or so. And got out there. And about the first half hour, I got one fish. It was about a 18 or something like that. And then the rest of the day, I didn't have a single bite. It was a rough day. I mean, I did get one fish at Imaquan, and it was a bowfin. I mean, it was okay. And then I got held up in a little bush. And I broke the top end of a rod off, so it was a bit of a struggle of a day. I'll admit I was kind of pouty. I wasn't in a very good mindset after that day. Came home, got all re-rigged up and whatnot, and I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll go out on Sunday and see if I can, figure anything else out. And Sunday morning, I set my alarm for about 5. I wasn't going to get up quite as early. And I hit the snooze button once, and went off again, and Adam's nudging me, and I'm just like, I don't know if I want to go out fishing. And he was like, just go out there. Even if you have a shitty day again, it's still fishing. And I'm just like, eh. I was super pouty. I was super grumbly. And I was just like, man, I don't feel like doing anything or whatnot. And he was just like, just go. You already got everything packed up anyway. And I was just like, fine. So I get out there, and I'm exploring around. And I mean, like, it was almost dead calm when I got out there. And I was a little worried too about that because, like, I don't really like fishing when it's dead calm. But then also I was just like, well, it's, it should be like hopefully post spawn. So, like, I figure maybe they should want, like reactive baits and stuff like that. So I started throwing the chatterbait. I started, throwing frog and stuff like that. And I mean, nothing. And I was just like, what the hell is going on? I started going through that whole, mental game of everything. I was just like, okay, what is going on here? Like, I know it's dead calm, so then I started slowing down a little bit. I started throwing the wacky rig. I started throwing a Texas rig and whatnot. Even then, stuff wasn't really happening. So then I really started getting frustrated. I was like, okay, calm down. It's not the end of the world, but seriously, what is going on? I was just like, what? I don't understand because, like, there's a lot of, like, vegetation and, like, there's, like, a lot of, like, I call it, like, scum moss and stuff like that that'll kind of come up.
Oh, yeah.
The main weeds and stuff like that, that stuff hadn't quite come up yet. I could kind of see it coming up, but it was about halfway there. That stuff hadn't quite reached it yet. So I knew that it wasn't quite ready for like a full-on jackhammer bite yet, because usually when that stuff will get to a certain point, that's usually like my go-to when I know when it should be ready for a jackhammer bite. But then again, I don't know anymore. It's just like, you never know what's going to happen. And so I was like, okay, well, I think I just need to find some structure. So there's one good area I know that has a lot of stumps and whatnot. It's kind of like a shallower area. And so I was like, all right, well, I'll just go to this one area. I know it's just like one secluded area. It's kind of like a flat in a sense, but it does have some deeper holes to it. And I'll just do some flip and pitching right up next to the wood areas and see what I can get. And, start flipping and pitching. And sure enough, after I got, up to this first one, boom, I got the first one. It was, I think, like a 17 or something like that. I was like, okay, all right, got something, finally.
Yeah. Getting something on the board helps me a lot.
Yeah. I was like, okay. It was just one, and it was probably like 9:45 or something like that. So, I still wasn't exactly, convinced or, quite brought back up. I was still, kind of in that mindset and whatnot, and I was like, okay, well, okay. I was like, they're around the wood. So at least, I got that going for me. So then I was just flipping and pitching all around the wood and whatnot. And then I was like, okay, do they want it as it's just sinking? Do they want it, popping up and whatnot? So then I had to figure that out. And so all it really was is I just had to flip it right next to that piece of wood. They just wanted it on that initial fall. And that's the only time that they would hit it, was just on that first initial fall. And so I would just go around and find every piece of wood that I could find and just flip it on there. And it wouldn't be on every piece of one. But sure enough, I'd pick, one here, there. And there's this, I think it was like an 18 and a half I picked up. And man, when I got that one, I mean, its belly, it had a super fat belly. And I was pulling the hook out of it, and I noticed in its belly, it had a tail sticking out of its gullet. And I was like, okay, okay, so you guys are hungry for stuff. You just don't want moving stuff right now, but maybe you did at some
Hmm.
point or something like that. So I was trying to think of like what was going on because I mean, obviously it was at some point either chasing or ambushing or something like that. Because I was like, well, it either ate a shad or a bluegill
Hmm.
because like those are usually the primary baits in there. So I was like, okay, if they're hanging around the wood, then maybe they're just waiting to ambush something. So then maybe that would make sense why they were, going after the drop after I was fishing in the wood. So then that's just what I continued to do. And it was a little slow going, but I was like, well, I I got time to kill, so that's kind of all I did, and I just kind of worked my way around, and I was finally getting in better spirits, and just it was around 11:30 or so. I kind of got this feeling, and I was just like, I'm gonna get a big one. I know I am. It's just like I knew I was. I didn't know where. I knew it was going to be like in the area that I was. I was just like, I know I'm going to get a big one. It's going to be around here. It's going to happen. Like I know it. And I'm flipping around this area, and there was kind of like a long log, kind of arched a little bit in the water, and I like flipped right in the middle of it. And it was like maybe 2 seconds as it was sinking in the water, and it was just thunk. And I mean that thing like hit that like a freight train. And I mean like I set the hook on it, and I mean like I felt that thing take off, and then I could kind of see it, and it kind of made its head come out of the water. I was like, oh yeah, that's a good one. I got her in the net, and I was just like, oh yeah, that's that's a keeper. And then if you guys follow me on Facebook or Instagram, I had posted the videos that I made after I caught her. But it was a good 20 and a half and a 5.3 pound largie. It was a beaut. It was a beaut.
I got to start bringing a scale with me. I still have, I don't have a scale on my kayak. I have, my catchboard, obviously, but I don't get weights, and that's one thing. I have a couple of guys who are bass boat guys, friends of mine, and they always ask me when I tell them the length. They're like, "Oh, but how much did it weigh?" I'm like, I don't know."
Right.
So
Yeah, I didn't always used to bring a scale with me, and I would have people ask me the same thing. Well, how much did it weigh? And I'm like, I don't know. But
yeah,
I just know how long it was. And so like I just have a Bass Pro one, and I don't really know like if it really truly is accurate, but I think it is.
yeah,
I mean, yeah.
cool. Well, I was curious about that because I know I've only had one tournament so far. It was on the Chesapeake Bay where the Susquehanna kind of meets it, and that was my first time ever fishing down there. It was a kind of crappy day for the tournament. It ended up we had like 2 hours uh, where it was clear weather, but we knew there was rain incoming, and then sure enough. I think lines in was at 6 and like 8:30 it started raining and then didn't stop raining
Yeah.
the rest of the day. So I managed to get ninth place with one fish. A lot of the field blanked, and I think the guy who won had a limit, but then the next guy, second place, had three fish, and then from there out, I think pretty much everybody else had one fish only. Um,
That that is wild.
But it was really weird too. Like it was the first time I ever fished. Well, not the first time I fished tidal water because I fished at the shore and stuff. And but the first time I fished a tournament in tidal water. And so at one point in the morning, I'm sitting there surrounded by bass boats and other kayak anglers, and then all of a sudden they just all left, and I'm like, something I should know. And apparently, the tide was changing or something was happening that thing. But from what I understand, wherever they went, they didn't catch fish there either. So it was very weird. Like it was very grassy. It was like almost the whole place we were fishing was like 4 foot deep, and then the weeds and grass came right up to the top. So like I was trying to fish weightless or all sorts of things I could think that were weedless. I tried a fluke. I tried. I'm trying to think of everything else I tried, and after I got so tired of flipping this grass and trying to pull stuff through the grass, and there was a lot of that snotty grass too, where it doesn't matter what you pull through it, it gets on
Uh,
there, and you're cleaning off your
yes.
bait every time. So finally, like at like 10 o'clock, I was like, I'm just gonna go look for something different. So whether it's depth, different depth or whatever, and ended up like going across this wide open bay to the other shore, and I found like a resort that had a giant dock that came out from it, and the water went a little bit deeper. Instead of 4 foot, it was like 6 foot. But the most important thing was there wasn't much grass. I was like looking at my graph, and I'm like, I can finally see bottom. My my graph was like useless in the other stuff. I mean, it was
Oh
just
yeah.
you couldn't see anything. So I'm like, and so I just busted out a crankbait. I'm like, I'm gonna try it, and sure enough, that's how I caught the only fish I caught that day. Was on a
Nice.
crankbait. So, and then I've been doing a lot of fun fishing too, and the thing that stuck out of me in my last two trips was I on the river I throw a lot of trying to think of the color Z-Man that I use. It's like chartreuse and green.
Is it hot
Hot
snakes?
snakes,
Yep.
yes. It's like my go-to color. This morning I was out and I threw that for probably 2 hours. I went out at like 6 a.m. I was going to try and get the morning topwater bite because I still haven't found a good topwater bite. So I threw a popper like first thing for a while and didn't get anything, and then switched over to the Ned rig. And normally with hot snakes on a Ned rig, I do very well. And it was like 9:30, and I still hadn't caught a fish, but I was seeing a ton of like almost like looked like sparkly silver bait fish jumping all over the place. And I was like, well, I do have some other colored Ned rigs. So I found a Ned rig that was it was silver with like a dark back, like a gray or black back. I'm not sure
Mm-hmm.
what the color was, but I switched to that, and bam, I caught a fish. Uh, Measured it, took the picture, threw back in. I caught 5 fish in a half an hour, and
Nice.
and and then the bite totally shut off after that. I'm not sure what happened there, but that color change was really, I think key to that. And the same thing on I think it was like Tuesday, I went to our local lake, and there on the lake, I usually throw a yum dinger that's baby bass. It's like white on the bottom, like a cream color with a
Mm-hmm.
green on the back. And I was throwing that for like an hour and didn't get any bites. And I switched to this green pumpkin with purple, and that was the change there too. I caught like 3 fish right away. So that's one thing that I've been really trying to not throw the same thing forever until I end up skunking, but to and especially they say don't fish history. It's good to but also be open to trying new things,
Right.
and
Well,
that's
that
been
and and what you did too is you did what they say is match the hatch.
mhm,
You know that it can also be real key too. Because like with my body of water, I know that it's primarily shad and bluegill. The color bait that I had on is called Superbug. One side is green pumpkin, the other side is black blue. So it's kind of like almost like a bluegill colored bait,
mhm,
and that is my go-to. And especially in stained water, you want to make sure that the fish is going to be able to kind of see it, and two, is it going to kind of replicate what kind of bait it's going to chase after, because missile baits, those back little flaps on there kind of replicate a almost like that bluegill tail in a sense
yes,
as well too. So yeah, kind of getting an idea and learning what sort of bait fish, and bait fish can kind of be a loose term as well. It doesn't have to be like the little minnows and stuff like that in your
right,
fishery.
right,
It can be the bluegill, it can be the perch, it can be the crappie, it can be anything in there. You're just trying to replicate what your target fish could be going after as its primary source of food.
Right, and that was another thing that I found that was interesting on the Susquehanna. There's so many different bait fish in there that I didn't even know about. There's like a black-nosed dace, which I had never heard of until I talked to a guide, and he was showing me some of the. I was like, "Well, what colors do you find that work well?" And he had like it was like a almost like a dark purple with yellow and something else mixed in the skirt color, and I was like, "What is that?" He's like, "Oh, that's black-nosed dace." I was like, "What? What is that?"
Ooh.
And I went and looked it up, and sure enough, there's a bait fish called black-nosed dace that
I just Googled that. That is really interesting.
so
Huh.
yeah. So apparently on the Susquehanna, it's a very common bait fish, and I had no clue that it was even a thing. So
Huh.
uh,
The more you learn.
yeah, so
Interesting.
very weird. But so color change was big for me, and another thing that's I'm the one thing I'll have to say I'm disappointed right now. Like last year by this time, I was really getting into a good crankbait bite on the river,
Hmm.
and I cannot buy a crankbait bite. Like I'm catching almost not like 99% of my fish on the Ned rig, which I'm okay
Oh,
with catching fish, but it's not the most exciting way to catch fish.
right.
And I think by this time last year, I had some topwater bite established. I had a crankbait bite established. Rattle trap was working. This year, it's like Ned rig or die. And I'm just like,
Oh.
ugh, yeah,
I almost kind of feel your pain in that sense too, because this time of year, I should have been nailing them on the jackhammer by now. And I have barely caught a fish on the jackhammer. And I feel your pain because I'm just like, I want to catch the
I know.
jackhammer bite right now. I just, ah! It's like, why are they tormenting me right now?
No, and that's exactly. I did catch. I think maybe 2 weeks ago, I caught two on a blue crawfish crankbait that watched a Jeff Little video where he talked about using a blue
Is
crawfish
it
crankbait.
the blue one with like the black stripes on it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that one
So
too.
and so I managed to catch two on that, but even throwing that this morning, I didn't get a sniff. I
Oh,
usually chartreuse black back is my favorite, and
yes.
I tried
Yeah.
that. It's just been I've just haven't found that yet. And but part of that I think is you had mentioned about vegetation being different, and I know I feel like by this time last year, the vegetation, especially in the middle of the river, like usually along the edges, sometimes there's hit or miss areas, but usually the whole middle is nothing but just a lot of grass.
Hmm.
And this year, it's just not as much like that, which is weird because I remember listening to a biologist somewhere talking about the amount or the how the frequency of grass has a lot to do with the water clarity because it needs
Mm.
sunlight penetration to grow to a certain length. And I don't think that our river has been like the Susquehanna has been overly cloudy or that it wouldn't be
Sure.
growing. And I don't know why one year the grass would be different than the other. You would think it would come up in the same spot every year, but I definitely have
Right.
noticed that isn't always the case. Like there's places where like the year before, I'd notice, a ton, and the next year I go and it's like in a different place. There are a few spots that it's pretty consistent, but there's also spots where one year it's very different from the next. So
Hmm. Yeah, and it was like I was saying earlier too. At Banner, like we are probably closing in at like 2 foot below normal. Like there's this area where there's kind of like two lakes that are right next to each other, and then there's like a gravel area in between them. Well, there's this little channel that goes in between them, and usually like water will be like streaming in between them. Like you'll
mhm.
hear it, you'll see the water going in it. Last time I was out there, like it wasn't even moving, like in between them, and like
Yeah.
you can see it's like the water tub line in a sense. You can see where like the water should be and used to be, and it's nowhere near. I mean, like even the trees out here today, like the leaves just look like they're just like you know wilty almost because everything is just so dry out here. I'm just like, ugh, we need rain bad out here.
Yeah, as much as I know, if when we do get rain, it's gonna blow out the river like crazy.
Right.
It's the same thing. There's like where I put in the water is way like I had to drag my kayak extra long, and
Mm.
then there's a part of the river near me where there's rocks, and there's usually current flowing pretty good through those rocks. So where I usually sometimes I'll anchor to stay there, and this morning I was able to just hang out like no anchor needed, and it was
Wow.
now, luckily, that's where I did catch fish this morning, so that they were still there. But yeah, it's definitely low, and it makes me think back to last year, the Hobie when that was here,
Mm.
and I haven't been upstate yet. We have a couple of tournaments upstate coming up in the next couple months, and I know last year I couldn't believe how low it was when I went upstate, and I'm wondering if it's that low down here where I am, if it's back to those same low levels up there, because I thought last year was like a fluke, but hopefully that's not the new normal. But
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We just don't have the springs of the wet springs like we used to anymore. I wonder if
well,
this
we
is.
had such a mild winter too, like not
Yeah.
much snow, and so I don't know if that plays a part in it. But
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. But yeah, another thing I definitely wanted to kind of touch base a little bit on too that I've definitely noticed this year as well is kind of that mindset and the whole mental process of everything I've noticed. Um, I definitely been out of the fishing game a bit, with the surgery last year and everything too, and whatnot. And the first tournament, I didn't really have, the worries and the cycles and whatnot. And then the very first tournament I had, down at Newton, definitely had, I definitely got into kind of like that mental cyclone, as a lot of other anglers can definitely experience. Um, it's definitely easy to get into and definitely hard to get out of as well.
mhm.
um, and it's also interesting how catching a big fish can really change your outlook on the day too.
Oh yeah.
But then also just even the way you look at things and the way you go about your day can just set and make your day as well. I definitely can make big improvements on that, for sure. Um, you
Same
know,
here, 100%. I know one of the things that I really have tried to get better at, and uh, it's that the more I am struggling to catch fish, the faster I tend to fish. And some with a Ned rig
mm,
and stuff, that doesn't work. I mean that kills you. Like the more I'm like, oh, I'll start looking at my watch. I'm like, oh, I only got 2 hours left, and it'll just make me speed up everything. Whether I don't
yes,
check a spot good enough, or I don't, if I make a bad cast, I don't make a better cast back to a spot that looks good, I'll just keep moving,
yep,
and that's been one of the things that I've really tried to focus on is not getting into that hurry up mode, um, where I'm just not fishing clean at all. I'm my retrieve's way too fast. Everything about it is sped up, and so that has helped me, but there's definitely still times if I'm skunking that I'm pushing, so it's a learning process for sure.
yeah. And I can definitely agree with you on that too. The two tournaments that I fished too, like if I hadn't gotten any fish within say the first couple of hours, I would, start making choices that I normally wouldn't have. And now, especially now that I have the motor, like I'd start going to places that I hadn't pre-fished or that I hadn't checked out. And, I'd get in there and start fishing really fast, trying to break it down. And not do anything, go out of there, and then I'd leave out of there scratching my head, and at the end of the day, I'd be like, "What are you doing, Susie? Like, stop it!" And like I'll stop and kind of look back at the day, after the end of the tournament, and be like, "Okay, what did you have successes with? What could you have improved on?" And then I'm just like, just stop and slow down. Like, okay, don't stop freaking out if you're not catching fish within the first couple of hours. Just do what you know. You know,
Right.
do stick with your confidence. If you're not catching fish within a couple of hours, hey, it's okay. I mean, move. Cover water though. I mean, like that. I know is a strength of mine, but don't do it in such a crazy, like, gung ho style. Like, don't just be like, "Shoo," crazy, like, "Ah," in a sense. Just do it in a smart way. Do it in the practical way. You know,
And
that,
another big thing for me too, kind of in that same vein, is if I do catch a fish, then to also slow down and think about why I caught that fish, or what
yes.
what led me to that, and to try and replicate that, and also not go like just to check that area again a little more, instead of just, okay, I caught a fish, now let's go. It's there's a lot. That's
Yes.
another part of it, which is, it's kind of weird because it's almost kind of the opposite of what, when I'm not catching anything. So when I finally do catch something, but to actually take the time and not just move on too quickly from that either. So
Yep. That, and just I've also been really working on just trying to pay attention to things happening in the water. Like if I'm fishing kind of slow, if I'm waiting for something to sink, or if I'm like slow dragging, I'm like looking around and scanning the water. Like, is there stuff popping on the water? Like, if there's something up on the edge, like did something just like pop out at something? Or if it's clear water, can I see fish swimming around? I'm trying to look and see if I can see what's happening too. I'm trying to get better at that as well.
that really messed with me too, that tournament, because in all that grass, it was carp city, and you hear stuff jumping
Oh,
all over
oh,
the place, and I was like, every
oh,
time I'd look, and I'm like, it's yellow, it's a carp. And then
yes.
it's so like frustrating, like, at first, because we paddled out at 5:30 and it was pretty dark, and I heard stuff jumping, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be an epic day. And then as soon as daylight broke, and I was like, it's all carp.
That has been like the story of the lake, like probably the last 4 weeks. Is the shallows have been nothing but carp city. It just
Yep.
and you're just like, is that a bass? Is that a bass? Nope, it's a beeping carp. Another beeping carp. And then like, you get up in the shallow, and then like you don't even know that they're sitting up there. You get too close up to them, and
Oh
then
yeah.
they splash in, and you're just like,
I've
ah!
I've heard them like smack the bottom of my kayak and stuff. I'm like,
Yes. Oh, stupid carp. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Stupid.
so it's tough, because that, you're trying to read your surroundings, but if that's all you see for, everywhere, that
Mm-hmm.
makes it tough. But like, yeah, today, if I, and it was weird. It was almost like the sun was coming up, and at first I thought I was just seeing like the sunlight glittering on the water, and I'm like, no. And then they actually started like breaking the surface, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
that's bait fish, okay. And
Yep.
so yeah, definitely interesting, but
Yep. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely some things to look out for, improve upon, and keep your head in the game.
yeah.
As I'm, I next week. So I technically have, in a sense, you could say I technically have 3 tournaments all in one. So I'm doing like an online tournament, and then I'm actually participating in 2 live tournaments. So one's on Saturday and one's on Sunday. They're both on the same lake, which is why I'm doing it that way, because I'm like, hey, they're on the same lake. It might as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, sure, why not? So one of them, I'm actually a participant and not like staff or anything like that. So that's going to be pretty nice. So like, I don't have to be behind the scenes or anything like that. It's going to be pretty nice. I thought, heck, why not? I'm just going to go in and just, do my thing. I'm going to pre-fish on Friday. I'm just going to, I'm going to focus on, I'm going to cover some water. I'm just going to figure out a pattern. And then once I figure out that pattern, as long as, that stays the same, that's just what I'm going to do on Saturday. And I'm going to make sure that I cover water, because I know that is what has worked for me. I know that is what is a successful thing in order to catch more fish, because covering more water it's more statistically a successful thing. Because I mean, you stay in one area. I mean, yeah, if you get a school of fish,
oh yeah,
yeah, it can work
that
out
can
for
make
you.
your tournament. Yeah, but
yes, but I mean, covering more water too, it can also work out for you statistically as well.
Mm-hmm.
But just in my mind, I know, okay, I'm going to figure out a pattern or patterns. I always want to figure out a pattern and then have like, a couple backup things. Just get, 3 key, if I can get 3 key things figured out. If I can get those things figured out, then hey, I'm good. That way, if something doesn't work on tournament day, I've got backups to figure out. And then if not, then, I'm just like, well, I'm just going to do whatever, until it works. I mean, chances are, though, I mean, usually 2 things will usually work out regardless. I mean, wacky Texas rig. I mean, come on. Yeah. You usually can't go too wrong with those.
I'm curious, like historically in the other tournaments that you've like directed and stuff, how often were you participating as well? Because that first tournament that I did this year was also the first time I ever was tournament director. So that was very also like in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, do I got to get off the water now to go set up the table, for the awards and everything? Yep. And luckily I wasn't judging. We had another lady that was judging for us, so I didn't have to do any of that. Nice. But it was definitely in the back of my mind about all the things that I needed to do.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, and then that's a whole other topic too for itself. I mean, like there's a chat going, your phone might ring.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There's all sorts of things. You got to get in early. You got to check people in, all that.
Check boards. Yeah.
Yep.
No,
yep.
and then I had like people messaging me, oh, I don't have my catch board. Can I use this board? I'm like, I have another one I have another one in my truck, but I'm also now, I have pedaled away from my truck. So
right. Yeah. But yeah, anywho. Let's see here. Majority of a season, there might be 1 or 2 tournaments a year that I participate that I don't judge.
Okay.
The season, so not very many.
Gotcha.
Most of the time, I am competing.
Wearing both hats.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, it'll be nice to be able to kind of take that hat off and just compete.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Cool.
It'll be fun.
Well, good.
But yeah, I'm just gonna, Friday I'm just gonna pre-fish, just get a pattern figured out, have some fun. Then Saturday, I'm just gonna tell myself, you know what, just calm it down, just fish, just fish how I know, just cover water, and just fish. That's all there is to it.
I hear you.
That's all there is to it.
Sounds so simple.
I know. It always sounds so simple. It always does. It always does.
Well, alrighty. Well, I think that was we covered a bunch of stuff. I definitely now Possum Kingdom is on my bucket list.
Oh my God. I know. One of these days. One of these days. You know, I think they go there about every other year. So, what, 25? I think they'll be back down there.
Okay.
So, yeah, definitely might have to go.
Yeah. Well, I'd say probably worth the trip if it's anything like it was, so far. So
Yeah, we'll see what tomorrow brings. Oh,
right.
but yeah, I guarantee somebody will have 200 inches
Oh my
for day one and
goodness.
day two.
Crazy.
Insane.
Alrighty. Well, guys, we'll close the show here, and I know we're just getting kicked off with the June Noobs tournament. So, congrats to I forgot that I wanted to look and see what the name of the
Yes. What
person who was
was it?
standings.
Mark something?
Mark Van Meter. Yeah.
Yep.
So, congrats to Mark for winning the May Noobs tournament. He had 92 inches or 92 and
Solid
3/4
minute.
inches. So heck yeah. So congrats. But we had a bunch of people that actually, sometimes we have, a few people that don't catch any fish. There was a few, but a majority of the people did actually put up pretty good limits. I mean, I
Did.
I had 78 1/4 and I was down in 5th place. So that tells you a little bit. There's definitely some pretty good limits caught. And so congrats to Mark for that win. And June is kicked off. I luckily got out this morning and already got 60 inches on the board. So I was happy about that. So we'll see how it goes. I might be able to put up a half decent limit this year or this month. Although I am going on vacation. I'm going to Florida and I'm not fishing. I'm a little disappointed about that. But no, we're taking my daughter to Disney, as a graduation present. So, but so that'll put a little dent in my fishing for a week here coming up. But still a lot of June left, so we'll see what else we can do. But
That's right.
all right, guys. Well, thanks again for tuning in for another episode of Bass Fishing for Noobs here on the Paddle and Fin podcast, where we bring you the techniques, the tricks, and the tips to help you rip more lips. You guys have a good night. Thanks, Susie.
See